Enough is enough, and it's time for a change!
Hello, party people. We are back for another Monday Night Raw review. And that means a lot of things are happening. No, not that much. Raw still sucks. The only optimism that comes into either the Lashley McIntyre match being match of the night, whatever stuff is happening with Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins to involve him with his son again, because I know they've been majorly pushing for him to make his wrestling debut, thinks he's been training for a while. Or just making Lana a singles act again, even though that fails like her managerial acts. So, what was happening? Of course, we were having the Peep Show with Christian, with Edge being the major guest, and obviously Randy Orton interfering in the interview. We also have Bayley, Sasha Banks in a triple threat tag team match involving the Iconics and Charlotte Flair, after it was scheduled earlier in the show for Charlotte Flair to face off against Asuka in a match opener. And then after, of course, enter the brand invitational, SmackDown superstars can now go to Raw. Just for belts to be relevant. Thanks. Somehow Carmella and Dana Brooke don't want to shop for the tag belts, or there should be feuds on Raw and SmackDown. And if you want to make this an interbrand show, you can wait until fucking August, because we actually have a major pay-per-view that actually people would care if there was interbrand matches. So yeah. I already feel like it's already irrelevant that they are even held in the belts, and they completely shut down the breakup storyline that was supposed to happen at Mania. And just immediately after Charlotte Flair just called everyone garbage and everybody just started getting in fights, the Iconics came and just told everybody that there was going to be a triple threat tag team match as well for the women's tag team titles at Backlash. Oh god, involving, I think, not the Kabuki Warriors, another team out of Nikki Cross, Alexa Bliss, the Iconics, and of course Bayley and Sasha Banks for the tag team titles. The match was fine as it got. I really didn't care. It just came into heelish tactics with Charlotte and Asuka picking up the win in a quick one. I barely watched the match opener, to be honest. It's gonna be the first time I said so. All I know is we finished and we get into the rest of the show I watched. But I just know, it already gives it de facto inconsistency how the belts are even proclaimed. We don't even have much of a tag division. It's either impromptu or just women that are somehow cool with each other. I already hate how they're trying to make this a one-sided rivalry with Charlotte Flair and Asuka. And you'll see later in the main event how I actually feel about that. So what else do we have in the show? We of course have Rey Mysterio refusing to retire after teasing us with a retirement announcement. But they didn't know but nobody else knew until Raw that it was actually a guest retirement. That it was just Seth Rollins taunting Rey Mysterio after hitting him with an eye injury just a few weeks ago. With, of course, Aleister Black coming out of nowhere and attacking after, persuading Rey Mysterio to retire. And it just ended up in an assault by Aleister Black, and then they just awkwardly went out to commercial. We just then weirdly transitioned into a tag team match. And I knew that it was because it was involving Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins again. And somehow a neutral and supposed to be badass from NXT out of Aleister Black. He's just there to be there for somehow his friend, Rey Mysterio. When it was supposed to be shown that he's supposed to be this dark, brooding, vigilante type anti-hero on Raw that has an MMA background, and yet he's just siding with the most babyface guy on Raw. I just have a weird transition. I have a weird, take with that. I really do. It ended up with Black and Carrillo picking up the victory. Moonsaults off the wazoo, bicycle knee, a kick, a stomp to the foot. It's nearly the exact same matches they've been having before. No stakes were in this. They were just doing this to represent Rey Mysterio. It did end up with a curb stomp on Aleister Black for the finally. It was fine. That's all I can say about the match. It was fine. Rey Mysterio. It was all coming to heads when Black when Rey Mysterio was coming out, when it was actually Rollins taunting. What a prolific figure that Rollins is supposed to be, this messiah, and he comes around with the most basic generic heel thing possible, taunting an opponent's entrance. Maybe we couldn't give this type of gimmick to Bray Wyatt. Oh wait, he didn't. He failed with it. So we're gonna give this God complex thing to Seth Rollins, and yet he does the most generic thing ever. Yikes. This does end up with, of course, the Disciples attacking Carrillo and Humberto, and then a double curb stomp plus a Murphy's Law. That was practically it. We didn't have a teaser, even though we had a preview of all the matches that were going to happen at Backlash. Not a lot of SmackDown matches. Christian encourages Edge in the Peep Show after bringing, some heavily doubts. I was about to go with it. It was like, okay, fine. It's a simple little tune-up with a bit of doubt, but it has full faith in his friend to win at Backlash with, even though it's a high moniker that he can live up with the name of the best wrestling match ever, even though there's no point. Even though this is going to be the first time Edge is going to be coming back in the ring. Even Hulk Hogan versus, I don't know, Bret Hart or something, it's going to be hard to live up to. Thinks Hogan is slower than Bret Hart. And who do you think is going to be carrying Hogan? Bret Hart. It's the dumbest thing you could ever answer. If you put Hogan in, I'm about to slap the shit out of you. It ends up with, of course, Edge. The crowd being the worst part of the promo. With Christian, serving up all the doubt, having all the encouragement, trying to fill up a fire in Edge to make sure he's ready for a Sunday. One black guy was shouting out, "Whose man's is this?" And of course, it's like, boo, boo. Christian's a jerk. Like, nobody was trying to actually stay silent and feel like this is an emotional promo off Christian, like two men that known each other for more than 20 years that are obviously have supported each other for so long, and the promos were trying to get more personal and I hate the robotic crowd, and it's sad like Vince McMahon can't even be like, turn your brain off, feel like you're actually a fan of the show instead of workers. And plus, you guys are not NXT superstars, you guys are trainees, even though we closed down the training facility strictly to do the show for the past 3 months. So that makes sense, right? I'm just sending this out, folks. I'm just sending this out. So ends up with Randy Orton obviously telling this promo to shut the hell up, and he's going to embarrass you at Backlash, bringing up all the things that has nothing to do with making the greatest wrestling match ever. This is the dumbest thing ever. It's like they even showed in the previews of the pay-per-view. They had Christian Edge, the greatest wrestling match ever, against guys that you probably seen had wrestling matches from 2004 to 2010. So it makes no sense. And they're like, okay, another match is in Backlash. We didn't even know what else was going to happen. And I thought they were going to tease up the Street Profits, to break the tie. They're going to have a challenge if you can take the tag titles away from us at Backlash. Thanks. There's literally nothing. There's literally nothing. They don't even have the Forgotten Sons getting a title shot with the New Day as a major match for Backlash. I don't know why. They've been teasing that for weeks now since their debut, weeks before. So yes, we had the decathlon involving the Viking Raiders tying up against the Street Profits 2-2. I think it's 5. I think it's 2-2 or 5-5. It ends up with a tie after winning the bowling challenge. They started tying up here and there. Of course, the Street Profits picking up stuff they're good at: archery, jogging, sword fighting, tug of war into some pool of milk. It's a small pool of milk. It was so bad, especially when they've been doing this for several weeks with no payoff, and they're both babyface teams. So it completely loses its luster. It's the equivalent. I'm not going to say the equivalent because that happened for longer, but at least the two best of sevens at least ended with a title match. It's the equivalent to the Sheamus and Cesaro best of seven from back in 2016, where it's supposed to end with probably a shot for the Universal or the United States Championship from back then, but it ended up with them tagging together for no apparent reason other than for Mick Foley to rip off the Benoit and Kurt Angle magic from back in '02. Even though they were already established stars at the moment and primary main eventers back on SmackDown, so it was big to see them as a tag team with two destructive forces getting at it. Sheamus and Cesaro were for mediocre mid-carders, even though they were supposed to be the potential main eventers. And then we have the Street Profits and Viking Raiders with a non-existent tag division on Raw. They just have these weird challenges with no payoff. What was the point of getting the payoff? Probably if they win these challenges, they get a shot for the Raw tag team titles. They went into nothing about it. They just treated it as comedic relief. And yes, I like both of these teams wrestling each other. Aren't we supposed to have a payoff to that? Then they draw it off 5-5 after a turkey leg eating contest. That of course they were going to win, because they've been making the runoff joke of Ivar eating turkey legs and their Vikings. Why can't we use the War Raiders name again? They've had it since they went to NXT. What was the point of, like, oh, I guess we can make them personality because they have beards and they like screaming. So they're the War Raiders. Isn't that, the Viking Raiders, isn't that cool? I mean, we'll make them the Viking Experience, and we'll make them the Viking Raiders. And then probably in a year, or at least in 6 months, we'll call them the Viking Legion. It's going to be so dumb, and it's so... God, this is why the XFL's bankrupt. This is why. And it just ends up with very little payoff, and still the same runoff joke of Ivar being called the Q1 while Eric not so much. They even showed off if they think that joke was so funny, they retconned it into their own show. So they put it with McIntyre convincing them to watch the VIP lounge later in the night. That was supposed to be the guest, Bobby Lashley, but it ended up being Drew McIntyre to taunt that he's going to face off against, that he's going to beat Bobby Lashley come Backlash this Sunday. Oh, God, this was so dumb. This was so dumb. We had a triple threat match. So obviously it's going to be selfishness beyond the board. The storytelling was supposed to be the lack of coexistence on Andrade and Angel Garza over the loss of losing Austin Theory, and of course Andrade getting pissed that Apollo Crews beats him for the United States title like 2 weeks prior. And of course Kevin Owens in it, because he's a babyface and he's cool with Apollo. So we already know Kevin Owens. Nobody's gonna have a good payoff unless they're big baby faces for like a babyface title match, especially in the mid card. So yeah, Apollo faces off against no, it's gonna be Andrade against Apollo Crews. So I guess to get him over, or at least they do a swift title change because they know that if they do Apollo Crews hoisting onto the U.S. title for at least over a month, people are already going to think that where is the U.S. title? Are they back to the European Championship? Where is that? So we end up with, of course, lack of coexistence, reverse elbow. I mean, no, it was a drop kick that took out Garza. They start fighting around the ring until Zelina Vega tried to stop him, and an accidental hit to Zelina Vega after Kevin Owens came in. Fake into that reverse elbow that I always liked by Andrade. Somehow, Schoolboy and Angel Garza, this was early in the match, he was about to rip off his pants. Like, why is that a gimmick of his? I mean, yes, that gets funny when he gets the advantage, but this is a triple threat match, so you already should have took off the pants. immediately. And he usually uses it as a distraction. I swear that's his stick with it. A pop-up powerbomb that got countered into, of course, the hammerlock DDT. No, the wing clipper or something. Garza obviously still ticks onto the leg, so there's at least some source of selling, even though Kevin Owens used cannonball sentons, and that involves him running. So how come he hasn't been feeling the effects for much earlier, even though there was a tag team match involving Garza and Andrade against Cruz and Owens, that wasn't an effect, and it wasn't like constantly aching on Kevin Owens to at least walk with a goddamn limp. I know that the injury must be minor, but it still affects him, but it's just dumb. It's no consistency in the matter for WWE. Double knees, double running knees, a leg submission later in the matchup, and then we got the wing clipper. Andrade comes to stop Garza from getting the pin and pins Kev. No, it was actually a back and forth with Garza and Owens until a stunner after a counter from the pop-up powerbomb. So a stunner finishes up the match. Kevin Owens is taken out of the way for Andrade to pick up the cover, and Andrade will face up against Apollo Crews at Backlash for the United States Championship. God, my head hurts. Next up, we have Drew McIntyre interrupting the VIP lounge that was supposed to be Bobby Lashley coming up to MVP to obviously taunt McIntyre, so nobody's going to waste at least several minutes to hear MVP talk, I swear to God. So, the Viking Raiders were also scheduled to face off against Lashley and MVP, so I guess there was going to be some weird transitional period. I'm not going to go over the backstage segment that much with McIntyre and the Viking Raiders, because we know he used the same joke that the females used to him in the backstage segments. So it's like, oh god, just shut the hell up and just go to the ring already. It's Douglas Claymore. You hate it when the baby faces try to forcibly pander to the crowd, even though there's barely even more crowds there, and he's trying to sell a shirt that obviously very little people are gonna buy. Like 515 shirts from back in like 2015 when Kevin Owens. It was Sheamus beating cashing in at Roman Reigns for the world title, even though he held it for like under a month. He like beat him in TLC, so there's like no point. No point doing that if you're gonna have such a less payoff. Have less of a payoff on Raw, and it doesn't work here for no notable reason other than to sell the point that MVP is unsuccessful. He never won a world title yet, and he wants to manage one of the top stars in the business. Of course, Lashley had a scuffle with, had a bit of, words with Lana before heading into the ring. It ends up with, of course, a countdown threatening to Claymore kick MVP again until Lashley came out of nowhere, and then the Viking Raiders come in. And then the Street Profits for some apparent reason. For no reason at all. This show is just so dumb to have any consistency. There's already a very little lack of heels. So it's like, why not get Tommaso Ciampa? He got jobbed out against Karrion Kross, and he's been on the NXT roster for like 15 years, so gotta do something with some of the guys that you call up and you try to gel for so long before they just lose their luster. There's really not that many top heels on Raw, seriously. You can just count Charlotte, I guess, Nia Jax, Lashley, and MVP. And Andrade, but that's about it. Anybody else on the roster that cared about this match? It was ending up fine. Running kick off the knee, a plancha by Ivar. It ends off of course, a full Nelson. It's somehow like Chris Masters is not trying to file a lawsuit. If anybody uses the shell shock, then Ryback's podcast, it's going to be making a lot more money. The match ended at least reasonable, with at least a real finish. Then last time when they faced off against the Street Profits, it was a DQ finish because Lashley was the illegal man. Now he's the legal man hitting up the full Nelson. So, of course, feel like a major monster with, of course, a submission for a finish, even though the spear and the Dominator works fine and makes him feel powerful because that involves tossing a guy over your shoulders. So it's like, why give him the full Nelson submission? Like, it's always the full Nelson, or they'll give you the ankle lock, or they'll give you the knee bar, or they'll give you the cross arm. Like, there's no other variety in submissions. Unless you go to AEW, but nah. That's like Smarks in my domain. They didn't even head up to a scuffle. They just walked away as soon as McIntyre was hitting up the ring. So it wasn't like when they were going berserk and beating the shit out of each other last week that I at least gave something for, even though they should have saved that for the final week of the pay-per-view, actually hyping something up. But that's beyond the point. Next up is the main event. Asuka versus Charlotte Flair for the, fourth time, I think, or the third. This time on Raw. For the women's champion, the new women's champion, to be still treated like a joke against women that really hasn't gotten anybody over. She's like Charlotte Flair. How can you not try to get anybody over? You went to NXT. I bet their strict reason was to get somebody over, even though it was for you to be a transitional champion for a developmental belt. You already won. And for no avail. I don't get the point of that. There was no prestige given to the NXT Women's title for it to go to a main roster guy instead of like a borderline free agent that they're waiting for on NXT. So there's no point. We'll at least give it to a woman that won it more than twice, like Shayna Baszler. By the way, where is Shayna Baszler? Seriously. Liv Morgan? They've been given matches to at least show that they're Liv Morgan like breaking women's arms and shit, and she's supposed to be treated as this MMA badass that eliminated everybody in the Elimination Chamber under 10 minutes, and she's not given a shot. Just Nia Jax is just given a shot on pay-per-view. She's not even a shot in the main event to at least face off against Charlotte for the next opponent on the next pay-per-view after Backlash or something. At least you can build up to that. But they just wanted to make it another Charlotte Flair and Asuka match. Even though this makes no sense, since Asuka's still not even a champion anymore to make the champion versus champion thing affect anything, even though it's the NXT Women's title, and that should be more equivalent to me showing up with the Ring of Honor title in the WCW event. It's dumb. It's a dumb thing, and if you're going to be, it's not like the match wasn't bad. I'm just logically, in any sense of effect, Charlotte should be distraught that even on NXT you lose, even though you have more experience and more legitimacy than anybody else in that ring from back at Takeover Saturday. So it's Sunday. So what the hell happened? What storytelling is going to be put here if they're going to forcibly keep Charlotte in denial? You know how crazy Ric Flair gets whenever he loses a world's title? No charisma. We know the athletic selling point and how much she's supposed to be the pompous little princess story, character that she still behaves like since 2016. It's so dumb and it's so weirdly boring. Thanks to the lack of legitimacy in the women's women's division in general. No Mickie James, and somehow the most clumsiest wrestler is going to face off against one of the top wrestlers on women in the women's title match come Backlash. And the worst momentum you can do is to pin Asuka. Figure 8, these women were beating the crap out of each other, forearm after forearm after forearm. Around us, kick a spear, nearly got a 2 count. Corkscrew moonsault. The match was getting really good. The Asuka lock, but she hits the ropes. Everything was going good until the distraction by Nia Jax. That cut off Asuka kicking her out the ring. Charlotte picked up the win with a big boot. And I was confused as when the hell does a big boot get a 3? It's the equivalent to when, I understand that they're jobbers in a particular sense, but whenever Charlotte gets a win off a minor move that's not the natural selection, that I guess that was supposed to be her pseudo finisher. That is not the figure eight. It's dumb. So why get a win off the big boot? It's like Edge getting a win by the edge. No, by the big boot. Or Batista getting a win from the spine buster. Like, really? It's a dumb finish to, I guess, get major heat back for Charlotte after winning a title that shouldn't be that important, and Nia Jax to still have some relevancy. Because we know if she wrestled another person under like 100 pounds, she will kill them. And that's not me being insulting. It's a true fact that Nia Jax is obviously not ready in the main roster. And this has been apparent for 2 years, even when she was given squash matches. That was 3. That was actually 4 years, but that's besides the point. And she's really bad to have in the on the roster at this point in time. And just having Asuka get pinned before Backlash. No reference to Joey Styles there. I just like saying Backlash. That sounds satisfying to say. But other than that, a finish like that, and you make Asuka still look weak in comparison. Like, we know she's gonna lose. Like, even when Asuka was holding onto the NXT Women's title, Nia Jax never pinned her clean. Nia Jax always tapped out to Asuka. It has to be some embarrassing reason that Kairi Sane's going to play a factor. No one's going to give a shit about the pay-per-view because it's going to be in the same setting and the same crowd because obviously there's no people allowed to come to arenas yet for probably in 2 months or something. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't care. I already feel like the coronavirus is just a hoax to begin with for some apparent reason, but that's just my opinion. But how do you feel about Raw? Please comment it down below. I would love to hear your opinion on it. My rating goes to 3 out of 10. It was bad. Like, really bad. Like, really, really bad. The only thing I can technically say is they made Lashley look strong. I thought the promo involving Edge and Christian was pretty okay, except it got intolerable when it came to hearing the crowd every fucking time. Like you're hearing a woman in a church after hearing the pastor preach. Preach, Pastor, preach! Preach! Edge, you can't do it. Preach! It's just dumb. They came selling out some parts of the show, but it's like, really? Some of these matches have very little payoff. What's Otis gonna do at Backlash? Probably tease to the point that he's gonna cash in. Well, there's no other storytelling around. At all. This is dumb. What a go-home show. No one cares. The only thing that they're trying to make the selling point is Edge and Orton. I don't get this. What kind of satisfaction is this? This is the equivalency to saying, like, Steve Austin and The Rock, the greatest match ever. No, I'm not denouncing that they aren't great matches. They're one of the greatest matches you would ever see. But it's like, really? It's like, obviously you would love to see The Rock and Steve Austin, but whoever said they wouldn't want to see The Rock versus Hogan at WrestleMania 18, you got a problem. And it's just dumb marketing. It's dumb marketing. Like, obviously, if you're an old fan and you haven't seen Edge on pay-per-view, if you did not watch the Rumble, if you did not watch WrestleMania, I guess it's supposed to be a selling point to get older fans to watch the pay-per-view. But against somebody like Orton, instead of somebody like Owens, or Triple H, or somebody that's also hasn't wrestled in a minute, or at least somebody that has wrestled but more of a legitimate name, should that be more of the selling point than just making something so common that could have been so common back in the day, like Edge versus Orton on Raw or pay-per-view? It's a dumb marketing tool, and it does very very failing build-up. So that's my opinion on it. I felt like Raw did a terrible job trying to build up, and I know SmackDown's going to do worse because they only have like 3 matches that involve so few, like 2 or 3 matches that involves their brand. So it's dumb. In the major point, I already wish they already killed the brand split, and I don't mind if they kept the women's tag belts or the 24/7 title. I didn't. It's just the brand split makes it all inconsistent. It's going to cause a dumb loophole anyway. And you make this brand invitational to know how much you really don't care about your brand split to begin with. Same thing with the wildcard effect. So it's pointless. This show already sucked. Hope you guys liked the review and want to hear your opinions if you liked or didn't like the show at all. A different perspective always helps me in the long run. Thanks for watching.